Talk about low-budget flights. No food or movies? I'm out of here. I like running better. Welcome back, YouTube viewers, to another video. So, some of you will probably already remember that. Didn't you already rank every Pixar movie you'd seen? And yes, I did, but I deleted that video because even though it was doing very well, it wasn't that good, and I'd only seen 10 Pixar movies. That was a bit premature considering I watched 7 more very shortly after. So, now I've seen 17, and I'm going to do an updated list. I think this will be a lot of fun. So without further ado, let's do it to it. Number 17. Now this choice is incredibly easy. Toy Story 4 may just be the most pointless, stupid, nonsensical mess of a movie I have ever seen. I'd heard some people say Toy Story 4 was very good. Other people said it was absolutely awful. I didn't know who to believe. I mean, my friend told me it was terrible, so I decided to take his word for it. But then I watched this gigantic breakdown of it. So, well, I didn't technically watch the movie. I watched every scene and a breakdown of it. So technically, I watched the movie. The same goes for the next entry on the list. So yeah, I've seen Toy Story 4, and I can say this really is terrible. For one thing, something I've never seen many people talk about, which is that the visuals are very impressive, sure, but they lose the charm of the original trilogy. They're trying so hard to be so detailed and have such high quality graphical fidelity, it just loses me. The third movie came out 11 years after the second, but it was still able to capture that simple charm even though it still definitely looked better. This is not the same but better, which is what many studios apply when making animated movies. They did Kung Fu Panda 3, How to Train Your Dragon 3. Not for this though. The The villain, some people say isn't even the villain. They somehow try to redeem her, even though she's a horrible person, didn't deserve any redemption. Lotso and Sticky Pete didn't get a redemption. Sid seemingly got scarred for life. But no, this Gabby person gets off just fine. The new characters are annoying and very boring. The world building is completely destroyed because Forky makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. It's supposed to be only toys are alive, but Forky explicitly says he's not a toy. He's just an arts and crafts project. So how is he alive? That doesn't make any sense. Does that mean a door is alive? A clock is alive? I guess so. The characters are completely destroyed. Woody is made to look like an idiot, and his final decision to leave his friends goes completely against everything from the first 3 movies. Jessie does nothing. Most of the other toys do nothing. The only ones to do anything are Woody, Bo Peep, who is pretty much a entirely new character now, who I definitely do not like, and then Buzz, who was definitely the worst of them. Because at least until the ending, Woody did kind of show his little trait. He was an idiot, sure, but at least he still kept his trait of loyalty. But Buzz, no, he's turned into a complete idiot who can't do anything without pressing his buttons that just so happen to tell him exactly what he needs to do. Because isn't that sure convenient? Buzz is my favorite character, so it's just really sad to see them completely butcher him. And I haven't seen Lightyear, but I'm better off not watching it. I am excited for Toy Story 5, though, because hopefully it pulls a Shrek Forever After and completely reverses this dumpster fire. Okay, number 16. I said, much like Toy Story 4, I already said I watched this entire huge breakdown of it, but I actually had seen the first 30 minutes of this years ago on my own. So number 16 is easily Incredibles 2. Toy Story 4 was a very pointless sequel that never needed to be made. Incredibles 2, well, I don't think it's super necessary. It's a movie that could have been good because, yeah, Brad Bird returned to write and direct. They actually applied the same but better principle to the visuals. Michael Giacchino was doing an amazing soundtrack. Compared to Toy Story 4, they just had Randy Newman recycle almost all of the music from the first 3 movies, which I know is something he would definitely not have wanted to do, but this isn't quite as terrible as Toy Story 4, but it's still really bad because, okay, yeah, we all know how terrible the villain is, Evelyn Dever, as Al Dunn put it in his great video, by the way, you should watch it. Evelyn Dever, the stupid villain. It's a plot twist that is so obvious, and yet her motivations make absolutely no sense whatsoever. I wish she actually were the screenslaver and her motivations lined up with the screenslaver. I wish she were just more of a comic booky type villain like Syndrome was. I wish, or Mr. Bob should not have been turned into an idiot. He should not have wanted. He should have wanted to take care of the kids while Helen was away. He shouldn't have said, me, but, well, she's a credit to her up, but you know. After the first movie, he would never say that. So it should have been that him going crazy did not come from him being incompetent because he's not incompetent. It would come from him just, it's really hard to take care of three kids when you're just one guy. Never mind the fact that, are you telling me he's been married for 15 years and he never had to take care of the kids by himself? Really? That doesn't seem very likely at all. Helen is just kind of stupid in this. But I mean, you could have, yeah, I said you could have fixed that up with Bob. You could have had Dash. Maybe his whole math arc could have been an actual arc and had him do something. You could have had Jack not be in it so much and not just have 10,000 powers. You could have, I don't know, what was it about? You could have gotten rid of all those new supers, or at least just kept one, probably Void, and explained how her powers actually work and give limits to them. You could have made it so, because at the end of the first movie, it seemed that supers were legal. So they should have done here that, yeah, supers are legal, so the screensaver Evelyn's plan would make sense, because it just doesn't. Because in the actual movie, she wants to make supers legal and then make them illegal again. That doesn't make any sense. It should have been, no, they're legal and she wants to make them illegal, okay? And just. Because, yeah, see, with some of those fixes, this movie could have been pretty good. Not as good as the original, but this could have been a good, fun sequel. But we didn't get a good, fun sequel. We got a pointless, nearly 2-hour waste of time. Ugh. At least it looked good. It had good music, but, yikes. 15. Okay, here's where I'm actually going to be positive, which is Cars 2. Yeah, I actually like Cars 2. It's not amazing or anything. It's a 75. It's good. I like Cars 2. Yes, I can understand how it's a complete departure from the first movie, and I do wish that it had actually been about McQueen in the prime of his life, because the first movie's about him as a rookie, the third is about him getting old. This one should have been about him in the prime of his career. You actually get to see other racer buddies he had, because we see them in the beginning of Cars 3, but we just met them there. If we actually saw some buddies he had here, it would have helped that work a little better, and I wish we'd also seen more of the Rusties guys, because that also contributes to Cars 3, and I do like Mater here. I think it's stupid that people say, well, he's just a dumb comic relief character, so he shouldn't have an arc, which, no, he's still an important character. So, and I think the spy stuff, as a fan of 60s James Bond movies, when you combine the just insanity of this all with Michael Giacchino's excellent score, you have a fun spy movie. Do I wish it either hadn't happened and just focused on McQueen, or Mater would have been the subplot instead of McQueen being the subplot? Yes, I would have liked that. That would have been much better. But for what we got, I enjoyed it. I like the vocal songs at the end. The visuals are a huge step up from the first movie, which already looked pretty good. And even though this movie feels longer than the first, even though it's not, it never feels awful. That said, it'll probably be a long time before I ever choose to watch this again. Again, not because it's bad. I enjoyed Cars 2. I don't think it's a complete cinematic disaster and a mess like everybody says. Sure, it's bizarre and a complete tonal shift from the first movie, but for what it's worth, I can enjoy it, and that's what counts, right? Number 14, Toy Story. Toy Story is a very good movie. That's most of what I have to say. It has very good music. Okay, great music. I love You Got a Friend in Me and the rest of the soundtrack, but very good, great casting. Yeah. Uh, visuals that still look pretty good to this day, especially on the toys anyway. It's got a really nice story about friendship, and it has a creative concept they did a lot of interesting things with, especially in the sequels. It's a good movie. It's a very good movie. I can understand why it launched such a huge franchise and made Pixar a giant. I just don't really have much of a connection to this movie, so I can't really get super in depth with this. I just like it. It's very good. And I think considering this was the studio's first movie, I mean, I like DreamWorks more than Pixar, but Ants was not a good first movie. It looks okay, I guess. Um, Ice Age, I haven't seen that before, but that looked fine. First movie looked okay, good, but So yeah, the fact that Pixar got such a good first movie is a real testament to the level of talent that these people had. John Lasseter, Andrew Stanton, Pete Docter. Okay. Number 13, Cars. I like Cars. Cars has depth, people. I do not care what you say. Okay, the second movie doesn't really have any depth, but this is a very good movie with a nice message, solid visuals, and a likable cast of characters. Even though it's pretty long, it doesn't feel super long because it constantly kept me engaged the whole time. I think most of the humor is pretty funny. It's not just a bunch of stupid jokes like you'd expect. The concept of living cars might seem silly, but I think it actually works in this story's favor because it's about a race car learning to slow down and not live life in the fast lane. And to truly appreciate um life and not just running around, kind of like Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. He learns that fame and glory can never be as great as friendships and relationships. After all, even if you win, what do you get? An empty cup? Yeah, this movie surprised me. I'd heard some people say it had death, other people said it didn't. So I didn't know what to expect, and I enjoyed myself. This is definitely not Pixar's best. I haven't seen A Bug's Life, but this probably is. That's probably the weakest of their golden age. Still probably good, but this, well, it doesn't measure up to a lot of other Pixar films. This is a very good movie that I enjoyed. I think people should give it another chance. Try to look at it as it is, and not as a dumb, silly comic relief movie with dumb tow truck. I like Mater, even in the second movie. I think he's pretty funny. And I guess that's it. Maybe I'll do a video on this movie sometime. Kachiga! Can't do that. 12. Finding Nemo. I really like Finding Nemo. What else is there to say? It's this out of any Pixar movie, I think it's just the definitive Pixar childhood classic. Who, depending on when you were born, who didn't watch Finding Nemo as a kid? I mean, it's just that one movie you end up seeing anyway. It's got great visuals, it's funny, it's got a nice, heartwarming story. It's nothing incredible or anything, but I like Finding Nemo a lot. And I'm genuinely surprised that this ended up becoming the highest grossing animated movie of all time for okay, actually that only lasted a year because Shrek 2 came out the following year. But I'm surprised it did as well as it did, but I guess it just shows that by this point Pixar had been so well established, and this just looked like the kind of movie you'd take your kids to and still enjoy it and an adult would still enjoy it himself. Because yeah, I really like Finding Nemo. I like the story of it just being about a father trying to he's afraid of his son losing him, of anything happening to him. But his son is able to grow and learn to do things on his own. At the end, he's able to do something he never thought he could have. It's a really nice story. But again, it's nothing spectacular. I like Finding Nemo a lot, and it's very good. Okay, number 11, Cars 3. Cars 3 is again just very good, not great, and sure not amazing, but Cars 3 genuinely surprised me with the amount of emotional depth this was able to reach. I like how Paul Newman, who voiced Doc Hudson, is a super legendary actor, but he died in between the releases of Cars 1 and 2, so it meant he couldn't be in the second one. And let's just side note about the second one, even though it's less than a minute probably. I'd say my favorite scene in Cars 2 is just when McQueen and Mater are in the Doc Hudson Museum, and Lightning just looks at all his trophies and newspapers saying, fabulous Hudson Hornet crashes, and Mater says, I know, Doc, be proud of you. And that's what this movie is about. Again, I mentioned before that I wish Cars 2 actually dove into the prime of Lightning McQueen's career, because it would have made some of the scenes here more impactful, but that said, this movie is still surprisingly impactful. It was a really nice send-off to Lightning McQueen's story. The effects are the best they've ever been, the visuals are very impressive. It's exciting. Randy Newman returns to do the score, so while he's no Michael Giacchino, he did a really good job with this. I like the final credits song. I was surprised at how much I liked Cruz. She's not an amazing character, but I'm glad that the person who ended up succeeding Lightning McQueen was a character I actually liked because we got to see her actually develop and grow and change. It was hard for her. She didn't just magically be better than everyone else like a bunch of modern movies. No, she had to earn this. And I like how McQueen isn't just portrayed as some idiot old guy who can't do anything. It shows that even when in the first half of the final race, even though he's definitely not going to win, he's doing pretty well, all things considered. Because you can't stop this guy. And all the scenes of honoring Doc just really hit, especially when you know that Paul Newman was such a legendary actor. And I like that even since Paul Newman died, they used a few lines he recorded for Cars 1 that were never made into the movie, so they used them for a new flashback. I thought they worked really well. I like this. This is a really nice story about legacy and mentors and students. This is, see, it shows that these movies do have emotional depth. They're not, this movie is not How to Train Your Dragon 3, but so it doesn't need to be. It's still a really solid movie and it's still pretty funny. And the ending of Lightning McQueen adopting Doc's paint job and painting on himself fabulous Lightning McQueen. It's so cheesy, but I'm just really glad it ended like that. And the final shot of a photo of him and Cruz right next to a shot of him and Doc, just really perfect ending to this series. Well, I talked about Cars 3 way longer than I thought I would, but number 10 is Inside Out. I don't think this is some kind of masterpiece like a lot of other people would say, but I can definitely understand where that sentiment comes from because this is a very good movie. Pete Docter directed it. I wouldn't expect anything less from him. This may be Pixar's most creative movie. The idea that it shows the inner workings of our minds and how our emotions work and our memories and our personality, it's all incredibly well done. It's not like some of their modern movies where it's, okay, this is an idea, but then they don't really do anything with the idea. They went fully inside it and got the most out of it that they could. Joy is a really likable protagonist. Because I think I've heard this before. It's a nice sentiment that, yeah, this movie shows you can make a character that's kind of demanding and still make the character likable. I mean, Fear and Anger are probably my favorite characters, but yeah. This movie is really funny. Well, I didn't really relate to it that much. I can understand how other people would. I think I like the scene which shows the inner workings of people's dreams. That was nice, and the ending is very emotional, I'd say. This is just a really nice, well-made movie. This is very emotionally intelligent, which is something a lot of people have said, and yeah, it very much deserves it. I'm glad this movie did as well as it did when it came out 9 years ago. I remember when the posters came out. I didn't watch this movie until last month, I think, so I could see Inside Out 2. But yeah, very good movie. I enjoyed it. It's no masterpiece, but it's really good. Definitely a worthy addition to the Pixar library. Number 9, Wall-E. This is the first one here I'd give a 90, which means great, a masterpiece. And while I do really like Wall-E, I'm almost going to be peeved it stole the Academy Award from Kung Fu Panda, but the Academy Awards are meaningless. Look at the end if you want Kung Fu Panda to win a million awards. But anyway, Wall-E is a very good movie. It's great. I really like Wall-E. It's just that I don't have that much to say about it. I mean, there are things about it I really like. I mean, of course, the visuals are very impressive. They managed to convey a bunch of information to the audience and a bunch of story without any actual dialogue. The captain was a very interesting character. Wally's a really likable protagonist. So is Eve. I like the ending credit song. I like how it's an environmental message. It isn't the exact same one we hear every single day of our lives. It's actually trying to say something. It's actually trying to be optimistic instead of the world is doomed because of us. You better fix your mistakes before you ruin everything. No, the world is messed up. But we can make it better because, well, one, it's an entire planet. It can do way more than we think it can. And I like that this is what this movie is trying to convey. It's also a funny film. It's able to blend that nice mix of, kind of comedic elements with Wall-E and then the whole serious story. Wall-E is great. Number 8, Up. Up surprised me because I'd heard that Yeah, the first 10 minutes are amazing, and the rest of the movie is just, it's good. But no, I said this in my last time I did this video, original version that I took down, which is that I don't think the most emotional part of Up is the beginning. I think it's the scene toward the end where Carl's just alone in his house looking through his wife's adventure book, and the whole message of the movie finally hits him. He had his adventure already. Now it's time for him to go have another one. That's some really powerful stuff. And the help of this movie, even though it definitely does, I mean, it's not, even though the opening is such a different thing from what you'd see in a typical Pixar movie, the rest of the movie still feels like it matches that tone, even though it doesn't go as in. I don't want to say that dumb expression, but even though it doesn't feel quite the same as the opening, I think the villain was very good, quite intimidating. The scene where he implies to Carl and the kid that he killed a bunch of people. I like that he's just a complete lunatic that's been searching for this bird for decades, which the guy's got to be over 100 or something. He's like a 100-plus-year-old Zuko if he never found the Avatar. The visuals are very impressive with all the balloons and everything. It's a funny movie. It has multiple little emotional beats that really work. I'm happy that the dogs didn't distract from this movie's tone or anything. I thought the kid was likable. The ending where his father doesn't come there to see him get his merit badge, but Carl does, as he gives him the highest honor he can bestow upon him, a grape soda bottle cap as the explorer's badge. That's some really great stuff. And I'm glad this again. I don't put much stock into the Academy Awards, but I'm really glad this got nominated for Best Picture. So did Toy Story 3, which followed the next year. Maybe if Cars 2 didn't come out in 2011, that would have gotten nominated. Who knows? But this should have won, by the way. I mean, come on, guys. It's a Golden Age Pixar movie. It's not like DreamWorks showing this year with anything that impressive, but Up is a great movie, and I think the praise that it has gotten over the years is definitely well deserved. This is a very unique and emotional movie. Number 7, Inside You. So this might only be above Up because I got to see it in a theater, but seeing this was a really nice experience. My whole row was pretty much full. There were a fair number of other people there, even though the movie had already been out for a few weeks. Shows how well this movie's been doing because if you don't count the live action, well, I guess the Lion King 2019, this is the highest grossing animated movie of all time. It's not even halfway done with its theatrical run. That's how well it's been doing, and I think it's very well deserved. This was a great movie. I think the main reason I'd say I like this a lot more than the original is because it's funnier. The original was quite funny, but this, I just got a ton of laughs at me and the rest of the people in my theater. It was a very creative film. I think it was just something about this movie just hit more than the first one did. I'm not quite sure what it is though. I mean, I've never had a panic attack or anything like that, but I like how this movie doesn't spend 1,000 scenes on Riley being a gross teenager that yells all the time and is sad. We got that over with in the beginning because that's not what this movie is about. Because that would have been boring and that would have gotten boring really quickly and just been hard to take. That was one of my worries when I saw the trailer for this movie. I was thinking, really, who wants to see a movie about a teenage girl? The inner workings of her mind, unless you are a teenage girl. But no, because that's not much like the first movie. It's not about the life of a girl. It's about the life of a person. Just things everyone experiences when they grow up. And I think that's really powerful. I like anxiety as an antagonist. I've probably said more about these movies than I actually did on my video about them. Uh, I'm excited for an Inside Out 3 whenever they make that. That'll be fun. Although I hope for that they don't really introduce any new emotions, or if they do, I hope they don't repeat the second one where it's Riley gets a bunch of new emotions and they all banish the old ones. Yeah, I don't want that. This is a really entertaining, good movie, and I'm glad it's done as well as it has. It definitely deserved all the praise and money it's made. Number 6, Toy Story 3. Yep, Toy Story 3 is not the best Toy Story movie. Look, I love Toy Story 3, but I just can't put it above the second one. Part of that is because while the emotional beats of this hit harder, It's not as funny, which I guess is not what it's going for, but still very funny. And yeah, much like I said before, I like that this movie applied the same but better principle to the visuals. It looks the same as the first two, just better. It has a great villain, great vocal song, even though it can't measure up to "You've Got a Friend in Me," of course. Um, Great acting as always, especially from Tom Hanks and Ned Beatty. Wow. Um, the whole final sequence is just something to behold. All right. I can't imagine why they even thought they could make a climax better than that. The ending, well, it didn't make me cry because again, I'm just not as attached to these movies as other people are. I can see how it would make someone cry. It's really well done. It's just beautiful. This whole movie is just a really fun, nice send off to this series because as far as I'm concerned, this is the ending of Toy Story. Well, unless Toy Story 5 turns out to be really good, but that won't come out for almost another 2 years, so we'll just have to wait and see. But in short, Toy Story 3 is really great, and also this was one of the three animated movies in history to get nominated for Best Picture. An animated threequel, no less. Really shows how good this was. Number 5, Toy Story 2. So yeah, I'd say Toy Story 2 isn't that much better than the third, but I still really like I love Toy Story 2. It's funnier, it has the most interesting plot in my opinion, and it's got the best showing of Buzz Lightyear. Because in the first movie, great as he was, that was his character arc. In the third, well, he's still great. It's mostly just about things happening to him. He gets stuck, turned into a villain working for Lotso. Then he gets stuck in his Spanish mode. But for this, no, it's him leading the subplot of trying to rescue Woody. And we see how strategic and smart he is. I love the plot of the second Buzz Lightyear. I thought that was hysterical. All the side characters are just really entertaining. The emotional bits hit really hard. The climax is great. It has a good twist villain. Well, it's kind of hard to take Stinky Pete seriously, as in he never really does that much once it's revealed that he is the villain, but he is a good twist villain because you're not going to immediately see it coming, but it makes sense once it does happen. You understand, yeah, that'll make sense. And it's just a really entertaining movie. And well, of course, we're all glad they made Toy Story 3. That was the best ending the series could have had, but if this were the ending they just made two of these movies, this would have been a really good ending. And I just love the ending of this movie. Might have my favorite final exchange of any of these movies, of any of these Toy Story movies, where Buzz asks Woody, "Are you worried?" And Woody replies, "About Andy? Nah, it'll be fun while it lasts. But once it's all over, I'll still have old Buzz Lightyear to keep me company for infinity and beyond." Let's hope Toy Story 5 uses that line properly. Toy Story 4 and Lightyear. Number 4, Monsters University. This is the best Pixar sequel, prequel, spin-off, extension, whatever. This is the first, until Inside Out 2, this was the only Pixar movie I'd actually seen in a theater, but it was 11 years ago, so I could not remember much about that experience. But I was surprised how much I enjoyed this movie when I saw it recently. Its message hits incredibly strong. The the characters are all likable and entertaining, memorable. I like its portrayal of how Mike and Sully become friends because yeah, it's the classic these two guys used to hate each other, but now they're best friends. But it feels like this has more weight to it because of the third act. It just really hits home. I like how Randall is revealed to be Mike's former roommate, and they were friends until he ended up joining the wrong crowd, ended up becoming a supervillain that was willing to kidnap children in Monsters Inc. I I really like the music. No, there's not that much to say about it, but it's good. It fits the tone of the movie well, because I think even if a movie doesn't have super memorable music, it should at least feel like it matches the movie, like Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. And I don't. What else is there to say? Oh yeah, I think this movie works because it of course works as a prequel, which is what it is. But it also works if you watch this and not knowing that this is a prequel to Monsters Inc. and thinking that was a sequel. I've heard people say when they were kids they thought Monsters Inc. was a sequel. It also just works as a standalone movie. it's able to set up things, explain things in the original, but it still feels natural without just feeling like, oh look, it's that thing from the first movie. It's also just really funny. I found almost all the jokes in this to be great. I think it's just entertaining to see Mike and join this loser fraternity. And it's just made with a guy who's 40 or something and had to go back to college because he lost his company. Uh, got shut down and he had to go back. He had lost his job. Well, one of the guys is just a loser, I guess. Or the other guy is he's living in his mom's basement still in his fraternity. I think anyway. It's just really well done. I really like Monsters University, and I'm glad that over the last few years, people have made a lot of videos on this saying how it's actually an underrated masterpiece. And I think we've reached a point where Monsters University isn't even an underrated masterpiece anymore. It's just recognized as a masterpiece. It's a really fun, thoughtful, entertaining movie. And what more could you want? Number 3, The Incredibles, the best superhero movie. Part of that comes from, much like, the old Marvel comics from the 60s, this is more than just huge plots and a ton of characters. There's actually something in this movie. There is depth. There are themes. There is character here. So, well, I'd give this a 93. It's great. It's definitely not my favorite Pixar movie, but I really like The Incredibles. I'm just amazed that they were able to do something like this. Also, I've never heard anyone mention this before, but how their costumes look like the Fantastic Four? I always thought that since this movie takes place in the 60s, maybe the costumes were actually inspired by the Fantastic Four and those just comics that exist in this universe. It could happen. Syndrome is a great villain, even though I definitely wouldn't say he's the best Pixar villain. Only reason I don't think he's as great as everybody else says is because his intro is just really rushed. It's not awful, but he just shows up out of nowhere and basically gets "It was me, Barry" moment. But it's just, "I remember me, Mr. Incredible, buddy? Huh, not buddy anymore." That's pretty much what it felt like watching it, but it was still really good. There's all the great lines from it, like um the whole speech that Bob's boss gives him about being a clock and a cog in a clock or whatever, and the "Where is my super suit" line, and of course "And when everyone's super, no one will be." And I like how every member of the family feels like useful and feels like he actually has something to contribute to this whole thing. And I like how their powers are all based off their personalities and roles. It makes it feel like they're not just given random powers out of the blue. Same thing kind of applies to the Fantastic Four, honestly. Another cue I guess this took from that. I like Syndrome's plan here. He has a very crazy 60s Marvel comic booky-esque plot, and I love those types of villain plots because even though he has depth, at the end of the, he's not technically after taking over the world, but much like those old villains, he's still a big crazy guy who has a flair for the dramatic. And that's always very entertaining, especially in a superhero movie. Bob is, I guess he's not my favorite Pixar protagonist, but he's definitely high up there. Yeah, I guess I don't really have anything else to say about The Incredibles. It's really great, has a fantastic ending, a great soundtrack, and it's the best superhero movie. But it's not the best Pixar movie. Number 2 is Monsters, Inc. Monsters, Inc. deserves more credit. I mean, it's part of Pixar's golden age. You'll hear people say stuff like, "Oh, it had a great twist film," or "It was a great movie," but you never hear that many people put it in the top 5 Pixar or whatever. I think it's their second best movie. I'd say it was really great. I was surprised at how much I enjoyed this when I first watched it this year. I mean, I'd heard about it on YouTube, so I knew it had twist film and all that stuff, but actually watching the movie, I'm just amazed how great it was. The visuals, the characters, the music. If I Didn't Have You is definitely my favorite Pixar song. I'm glad it actually managed to win the Academy Award for Best Song. Waternoose is the best twist villain of all time. Randall is the second best Pixar villain. I wouldn't say Waternoose is better, by the way. I like Randall because he's just a classic slimy, weird villain. And even if you didn't have Water News to be a twist villain, I still think this movie would have been pretty good. Or it took me until recently to really figure out what this movie's theme was, but I quite like the theme. It's that thing people aren't always as they appear. As the monsters find out, kids are not toxic or anything like that. That was a lie made up. Or it may not even have been a lie, it may have just been a misconception. Or we see that some people are really nice. Yeah, like the kids. Human kids is what Mike and Sully learn. Or the little girl Boo, she sees that these monsters aren't necessarily scary. But then you see that Water Noose, who seemed like a nice guy, was actually an insane lunatic, who, as he says, I'll kidnap 1,000 children before I let this company die. Which the ending of Coco rips off with his whole villain confession. Uh, I saw this video from the YouTuber Greg Owen. It was When Pixar Was Perfect. He goes over how this movie has such a fantastic intro. And it was hard for me to even say where the intro stopped because it doesn't have an intro section like modern movies. It just flows so well. In 10 minutes, we get introduced. We get everything we need to know about the two main characters, Sully and Mike. We get introduced to Randall, our villain. We see some side characters like Water News and Cecilia. We see, well, we don't get introduced to Boo yet. We understand how important Scream Energy is and how that works. We understand how this world works by seeing the whole going to work sequence. We get everything we need to know, and it's done absolutely perfectly. No, as you all know, exposition. There is no character just standing there and explaining everything that's going on. And this movie is just super charming, I'd say. And it actually has a good characters breakup at the end of the second act because it doesn't last that long. It actually has them shortly after talk it out and resolve it like those, which is something other movies should do. Seriously, where did the characters break up at the end of the second act cliche come from? But anyway, Monsters Inc. just could not win because number one is uh, Ratatouille. Yeah, you probably all saw this coming. I mean, if you watch my channel, that is. I put it in my top 10 list of favorite movies. I, I did a video called Why Ratatouille is Pixar's Best Movie, which you should go watch. I've been in depth about this movie multiple times. I'll just say the same things again. Chef Skinner, the best Pixar villain. Visuals, great. Remy, I've never seen this before though, but he's my favorite Pixar protagonist. Michael Giacchino once again proves his musical prowess by first doing a superhero score, then doing this, a French score, then doing an old Charlie Chaplin silent movie score, then doing a whole spy movie music, then a whimsical thing for Inside Out. And I love the movie's message of, yeah, not which we pretty much get plainly stated during the whole monologue from, what's his name? Anton Ego at the end of the movie, which that may just be the best monologue in cinematic history, where he says he finally understands what gusto meant by anyone can cook. Not everyone can become a great artist, as we see with Linguini. He's putting on this charade of being some great chef when he's not that. He's kind of a loser. But true greatness can come from anywhere, as we see with Remy. Even a rat, who is really portrayed not as a cartoony rat, really, but just as a regular rat, but he happens to be able to understand humans and how to cook. Even he is destined for greatness. He can become the greatest chef in all of France. And he did this all by himself. All he needed was a little inspiration. The movie is also just really funny. So many of the jokes really worked for me. And it's just a really nice, inspiring movie. So that's all for now. And as always, keep on juicing.